The rain is hammering down tonight, the kind that turns every streetlight into a blurry halo and makes rooftops sound like someone shaking a bag of popcorn over your head. Inside their cramped apartment, Sophie stirs a pot of chicken noodle soup extra carrots, because she knows Mark likes it that way after a long week. She's even baked cornbread, trying to make the place feel warm, like a hug waiting for him. But when the clock creeps past 9, there's still no sign of him. No call, no text. She tries his phone straight to voicemail. That pit in her stomach starts whispering what her heart doesn't want to hear has been distant lately, replacing jokes with sighs. "How was your day?" with "Why didn't you fix this?" The door bangs open without warning. Mark's soaked, his face like carved stone. No hello, no glance at her, just shoes kicked off and a flat command. "Pack your things." She freezes, the words not fitting anywhere in her mind. When she asks why, his answer comes like a blade. "You're nothing, a dead weight I've been dragging out of pity." Every little thing she thought was love cooking for him. Keeping the place tidy now spits back as evidence she's worthless. She tries to remind him they're married, that they can fix whatever's broken. He laughs like she just told him she still believes in Santa. Before she can grab a sweater, he's shoving her toward the door, his grip tight enough to bruise. She stumbles into the narrow back alley, the air thick with the smell of wet garbage. The suitcase, she didn't even pack herself, tips into a puddle. Mark calls her trash and slams the door behind her, leaving her standing in the rain, clothes plastered to her skin. Shadows move behind neighbors' curtains, but no one comes out. Somewhere, historians still argue whether silence from a crowd is cowardice or quiet cruelty, but in that moment, it doesn't matter. She's alone, dragging a waterlogged suitcase down an empty street, wondering how the man who once swore never to hurt her just tossed her into the cold like a broken umbrella. Hours blur until she finds a bus shelter. She sits there, shivering, the truth slowly replacing shock. This isn't just heartbreak, it's abuse. She looks at the faint red marks on her arm, the rain dripping off her hair, and feels a small ember flicker inside. It's not strength yet, just the first stubborn thought that she'll never go back. Morning creeps in with the low hum of traffic and the stale scent of a vending machine nearby. Sophie wakes stiff and sore on the cold bench, her suitcase still by her feet like a loyal but battered dog. The rain has stopped, but the dampness clings to her clothes, making them stiff as cardboard. A bus driver pauses, asks gently if she's okay. She lies, says she's waiting for someone because pity feels heavier than the suitcase. By midday, she's in a corner of a small coffee shop, fingers wrapped around a paper cup of tea she can barely afford, 5 crumpled bills left to her name. Her phone lights up with a message from Mrs. Turner, the neighbor who always smelled faintly of lavender and gossip. She saw Mark with the woman in the red coat again. Then another message, this one from Ben downstairs. Mark was at the bar last night with Claire, looking very cozy. Sophie reads the name twice, as if the letters might rearrange into something less painful. Claire, perfect hair, expensive perfume, a voice so smooth it could butter toast, the kind of woman who seemed just out of Mark's reach, or so Sophie once thought. Now she sees that necklace Claire wore last time, the one Mark once said belonged to a different world than us, and it fits together too neatly to ignore. That ember from the night before burns a shade brighter. She scrolls through her contacts and lands on a name she hasn't called in almost a decade. Edward Miller, her father. Divorce, shouting, slammed doors, silence. He left when she was 18 and never explained, and she learned to stop hoping for calls that never came. But today, she presses dial. His deep voice answers after 2 rings, and when she says, "Dad," there's a pause that feels like it could tip either way. She tells him she needs help. His reply is simple, "Stay put." 20 minutes later, a black sedan pulls up and Edward steps out. Older, grayer, but still straight-backed, his eyes sharp as if they've been measuring the world this whole time. In the coffee shop, he studies her soaked clothes, her trembling hands, the bruise on her arm. "You're coming with me," he says, no room for argument. She protests about being a burden, cuts her off with, "You're my daughter," and just like that, some of the weight lifts. In the car, he makes a quiet phone call, gather information on Mark Bennett, employment, finances, associates, and find everything on a woman named Claire. Sophie stares at him, realizing there's a whole life here she knows nothing about. She doesn't yet know the scale of it, but the man sitting beside her isn't just her father, someone Mark should have thought twice before crossing. Historians still argue whether poetic justice is born from fate or meticulous planning, but Edward Miller seems to have both in his back pocket. 3 days pass in Edward's Housewife place, so large Sophie could walk a lap around the living room and still feel like she hasn't crossed it. High ceilings, polished floors, a kitchen gleaming like a showroom. But it's the silence that startles her most. No doors slamming, no muttered insults, just the quiet rhythm of someone living on their own terms. Edward is polite, but busy meetings, hushed phone calls, strangers in suits arriving with folders. She catches fragments. Find a paper trail, give me those bank records, video if possible. She doesn't press for details. Part of her isn't ready to know. On the 4th morning, Edward calls her into his study. Behind a desk that could survive a hurricane, he slides an envelope toward her. It's an invitation addressed to Mark and Claire for a private dinner at the Grand Royal Hotel. Sophie blinks, unsure if this is a trap or a peace offering. Edward's eyes sharpen. I wanted to see what they threw away before I take everything from them. He insists this isn't revenge, but respect or restoration of her dignity in a language they'll understand. Mark, he predicts, won't refuse. Greed never does. 2 nights later, Mark stands in front of his mirror, Claire behind him fastening that same diamond necklace. They walk into the Grand Royal like actors stepping onto a stage, ready to impress the mysterious Edward Miller. The private dining room door opens and there's Sophie, in a deep emerald dress under the chandelier's glow, calm, composed, powerful. Edward introduces her as his daughter. Claire stiffens. Mark's pulse trips over itself. Dinner begins with small talk, but halfway through Edward shifts gears. He lists Mark's sins with the precision of someone reading from a ledger: public humiliation, physical assault, unlawful eviction. He lays out the evidence: hospital records, witness statements, even video. Claire's color drains. Mark stammers. Edward cuts him off, saying he'll explain himself to the police instead. Then Sophie reaches in her bag and slides divorce papers across the table. Her voice is steady, almost gentle. Sign them now or later. Either way, we're done. The calmness is sharper than any anger. Mark's hand shakes as he signs, and before the ink dries, 2 officers step in, reading him his rights as they cuff him. Claire doesn't lift a finger to help. When the door closes, Edward tells Sophie she deserves better. Only now does he reveal the truth. He's a billionaire, and everything he has will go to someone who understands loyalty and kindness. She looks at him not just as the father she barely knew, but as the man who stepped in when she needed it most. They leave together under a soft rain, not once looking back. Somewhere behind them, Mark sits in a police car, the future he imagined dissolving like ink in water. Sophie walks forward knowing something certain. People who betray you might think they've won, but all they've really done is set the stage for their own downfall, and when the curtain falls, it's never graceful. The streets glisten as they drive home, every drop of rain catching the streetlights like tiny lanterns. Sophie leans back in the seat, not in triumph, not in gloating, but in the quiet relief that comes when the worst part of storm has passed. The city hums around them, a low, constant murmur, the way the ocean does long after the waves have stopped crashing. She feels the leather seat beneath her, the steady warmth of the car's heater, and lets herself breathe deeper than she has in years. Edward doesn't speak much, and she doesn't need him to. The silence between them is not the heavy kind they once knew. It's lighter, like a pause in music where both players know exactly when the next note will come. She watches the raindrops trail across the window, each one a tiny lens bending the light into something softer. By the time they reach the house, the rain has settled into a fine mist. Sophie steps out, the air cool against her skin, and takes a slow look at the dark, sleeping neighborhood. Somewhere behind them, the events of the night are already becoming part of a closed chapter, a memory she will visit less and less as the days unfold. Inside, she slips off her shoes, hears the gentle creak of the floorboards, and feels the quiet embrace of a place where she is safe. She knows the world will test her again, life always does, but tonight she carries the knowledge that she is not the woman who stood in that alley with rain in her eyes and a suitcase in her hand. She is someone who has walked through the downpour and come out on the other side. And for now, that's enough.